Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
How about them dogs? How about them falcons? Yeah. I know what you guys did last night. I wasn't here last Sunday, and if you didn't notice that, I'm terribly upset. Claudia did a great job, and you had a great service for last Sunday and also for Christmas Eve. And so some people say, what did you do on your time off? And I said, off? Man, I worked hard. Occasionally, when I am off, I go speak someplace else. This was an unusual trip because I had an opportunity to go to a section of the world that I have never been to before. You may not know it, but Unity is quite popular in Nigeria. And that's because Charles Fillmore, when he first started, Unity liked to broadcast. They were actually on their own radio station, and they would broadcast. He was a night owl, so he would broadcast late at night, and he did something he wasn't supposed to do. He'd crank it up all the way up to full voltage, and as you know, AM signals bounce against the ionosphere, and it traveled all the way across the world to Nigeria, and people heard the message, and they loved it, and started their own organizations. So anyway, I went there to speak. However, the problem is this: they do not speak English. I was concerned. I talked to the main pastor, and I said, well, how's this going to work out? And he said, well, actually, they can't speak if they do understand you. And I said, well, how will I know that? He says, actually, they're very quite responsive to you. This is a very lively audience. They're sort of like Unity Holy Rollers. I mean, they listen to you, they get excited, and they'll let you know. And I said, okay. So I got up there and spoke. I made my first point, and all of a sudden, somebody in the audience said, Kabula. And I was a little bit taken back by that, but wasn't sure. I said, well, that's sort of like amen. And so that encouraged me, and I went on and made another point, and somebody in the back said, Kabula! And all throughout the service, and the more I talked, the more excited they got. They said, Kabula, Kabula, try it with me, say it, Kabula. See how powerful that feels? And so I was much encouraged until afterwards we were visiting the rest of the compound, much like Unity Village. It had different places. It had its own farm, and he was showing me the area, and he said, well, let me show you our farm, and let me take you over here where we have this huge barn where we keep all of our bulls. And he said, actually, if we'll cut across this pasture, you can get there faster, but be careful, don't step in the Kabula. I made all that up. We're talking about faith this morning, and I've done something that is extremely trusting of you. I've given each of you a rock, not to be thrown at the minister. I can see the headlines now: minister stoned to death by congregation for poor jokes. There's a movie starring Nicolas Cage entitled It Could Happen to You. And in this movie, Nicolas is a policeman, and he's in a restaurant. He's had his meal, but he doesn't have any money to tip the lady. So he says to her, well, I bought this lottery ticket, and I tell you what, I don't have any money to tip you, but if I win, I will share my winnings with you. Well, as fate would have it, he won. And he kept his word, and he was going to share this money with this lady, whom he didn't know. Wasn't real pleasing to his wife that he would do that. So she and he had to go catch a ferry to go over to this place in New York where they were going to receive this lottery that he'd won. And they literally missed the boat. The ferry had left by the time they got there, so they decided to sit down at this little coffee house and visit for a while. And he was talking about he and his wife and how different they were. And he says, you know, if we were talking about television channels, I would be CNN, and she would be the Home Shopping Network. You know, if you and I had to choose which channel represents our life this morning, I wonder what you would choose. What is amazing about the technology of our day and time with cable and satellite is that the choices seem to be unlimited. Unlimited. You've got the Playboy channel. Not that I've ever watched that, but I'm aware that it's there. Sci-Fi channel, you've got the old movies, you know, you've got the Discovery channel. Did you know there's a Wisdom channel? It's sort of a New Age, New Thought kind of channel, and you can get that, I think, if you order the big package of the dish. And some of my friends have broadcast on that show. But the channel sort of represents faith. We're talking about faith this morning, and talking about starting a new year and a new life. And what if we could see our life as one great big dial, like a radio dial or a television dial, and at every point we could choose to watch whatever channel we wanted to watch, or focus in or lock in at any particular point that we would like to. Because I believe that that's what the secret to success is all about. Understanding that we can always tune to another channel, that we have another choice, and that choice really has to do with what do we believe. Now, Jesus talked about two things primarily. One was love, the other was faith. And he said a lot. I'm not going to read you all, but I did a little quick search the other day. And he said in Matthew 9:28, your faith has healed you. Down just a little bit farther, he says, according to your faith will it be done to you. That's why we say here that his greatest teaching is that life happens to us according to what we believe, or what we think, or what we're watching. Which channel are we watching in our life? In Matthew 17:20, he says, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will. Now listen to this. He says, nothing will be impossible for you. Just a little faith. What do we have faith in? Matthew 21:22, he says, if you believe, which is what faith is, you will receive whatever you ask for. What a phenomenal thought. It all is based on what? Belief or faith. On one occasion, he went back to his hometown. Wasn't very well received. The people there knew him because he had grown up there, and they remembered, well, he's got 4 brothers. We know Joseph, we know Mary, he's got 4 brothers, and he's got his sisters, and who is this man? So it says in Matthew 13:58, he says, and he did not do many miracles there because of their lack of faith. If we want to have a new life in 2003 that's different than what we have experienced in the past, if we want things to turn around so they may appear to be miraculous to us, then what seems to be required, if I understand these scriptures, is an element called faith. Now in Hebrews it says faith is the substance of things hoped for. It's on the front of your bulletin if you want to see that. It's the substance. Substance means that which stands under, the foundation out of which everything comes. Faith is the substance of that which is hoped for in our lives. And it is the evidence of things that are unseen. Now what we teach here is called metaphysics. Meta meaning beyond, physics means the physical world. And we believe that the physical world comes out of an invisible realm. And that invisible realm is faith. It is out of the invisible that everything comes. Everything is first a thought or a belief in mind and a consciousness before it actually comes into form and into reality. Therefore, if we desire a new life, a better life, on every level, prosperity, health, abundance, great relationships, family healing, and all of that, what is required of us from Jesus is that we understand how faith works. First of all, we are living our faith every single day. We all have faith. We're not lacking in faith. It's not that we don't believe, it's that we believe in the wrong things. Or we believe in the erroneous part of life, and therefore our experiences outpicture the belief that we are holding. Let me tell you a story. The story is about Elaine. And Elaine hadn't quite understood what was going on in life and how she was experiencing what she was experiencing. What happened to Elaine was that she got stuck where a lot of us get stuck. On this channel chart that we have, with this great big wheel that we could spin and fine tune into any kind of channel, she had got stuck on the suffering channel. She grew up a sheltered child and received the lessons from her mother that a woman's role was to fill everyone else's needs. After finishing college, Elaine married a mainline Protestant minister. Despite the fact that her inner voice told her that he was not her perfect partner. And as she looks back over the 25 years that she's been with this man, she speaks of knowing there was something just before the wedding that told her this is not right. But she didn't listen to her inner voice the night before the wedding, and that was telling her, call this off. Sadly, she neither had the courage to trust her inner voice nor the faith to follow her inner guidance. So the next morning, sobbing, she walked down that aisle. Over the next decade, the marriage produced 4 children, and the family went through the motions of a normal life, so-called. Then 5 years ago, the illusion was shattered when Elaine's husband broke down and admitted to her that he was homosexual and that he was in love with an Eastern Orthodox priest. Her husband was also drinking heavily, and his alcoholism with all of the related codependency problems became their reality. Elaine's husband eventually joined Alcoholics Anonymous, and Elaine realized she needed to face her problem of codependency. In the midst of this upheaval, Elaine's widowed mother, who was her sole support and anchor, died. Elaine felt she had nowhere to go and no resources, yet she felt like she had to protect her children and maintain the facade of a normal life and to play the perfect role of the pastor's wife. There she was, planning church socials, teaching in the children's program, holding up a happy front for everybody to see that they were the perfect religious family. However, her life was a nightmare. Elaine tried several business and professional ventures. While pursuing one of those, she met a man who paid attention to her and cared for her, respected her, treated her nicely, and seemed to be attracted to her, and she to him. Needless to say that she found that this was a challenge for her as to what she was going to do. She found out that he also was married to a minister, a female minister who was a lesbian. Needless to say, they had no sex life, and he very much desired Elaine as she also desired him. When she saw how complex things were, Elaine actually retreated, ran away from that relationship. She is still living with her now sober homosexual husband. She thinks of him as a friend and a parent to their children, but not as a husband. She's unhappy, unfulfilled, and she is suffering. Now, Elaine could choose another channel, but she doesn't realize it. She sees herself as stuck with 4 children, no money, no surviving family, and an unhappy marriage. Now, how do we get unstuck? Because I'm sure we all have been there, and we feel some suffering in our lives, and some have experienced a lot. One of the greatest revelations that I had many years ago was that I realized that I was in the suffering channel because I was blaming everybody for what was happening in my life. Look what they did to me. Look what she did to me. Look what he did to me. Until finally these teachings that we teach began to make sense. And I began to realize that my life issues out of what I believe. And once I was willing to get past my anger and being upset at other people and supposedly what they've done to me, I began to realize that no, all of that, every single part of that came out of my belief. That life was happening to me according to my belief. See, we would want to say that life happens to us, but in actuality, life happens from us. That is the great wisdom that Jesus wanted us to understand. That is why he said, it is your faith that has done this. That's why he said, according to your faith, it is done to you. That's why he said, if you had just a little faith, you could do miraculous and wonderful things. That's why he said, if you truly believe that you will receive, then you will receive it. What an amazing teaching for us. And as we enter into a new year and we make New Year's resolutions and we resolve we're going to do it better than we did last year, this is the secret to success. To know that we create our lives according to our belief. So we would teach here that if there's something going wrong in your life, if you're having trouble paying your bills each month, the problem doesn't lie in your checkbook, it lies in your belief around money. And we would ask you to examine that. If you're having trouble in a relationship, we would ask you not to work on the relationship as much as your belief about marriage, about love, about why people come together. And as you become clear on that and move to hopefully another and higher level of consciousness and belief about it, then your life will eventually fall into the same pattern. Life happens to me, through me, by my belief. Once we learn that, we have tapped into an amazing resource of energy to create our lives any way that we want to create them. But if we get stuck in the suffering channel, then we're going to remain there. See, Elaine must not believe that God does not want her to stay there, to suffer and live in a sexless marriage, covering up for her husband daily. See, there are no jewels given out on this earthly plane, and even after this earthly plane, for people who suffer. It is not God's intent that we suffer. Many people justify their misery by believing that they're doing the godly thing by sacrificing and suffering. Elaine could have changed from the suffering channel to the discovery channel any time she wanted to. Probably the next most important part of faith is to understand that it is really just a matter of switching the channel. That's all it is. It's a matter of choice to make that decision to switch. In Romans 12:2, Paul says, "Be ye transformed." If you want your life to be transformed, if you want it to be new, here's his secret. He says, by what? The renewal of your mind. By the way you think about things. By the way you think about others, by the way you think about yourself primarily, and that's where most of us falter. And that's why we tend to get stuck. An author I read the other day said that hopefully we go through 4 stages if we don't get stuck in one of them. In life, one of those is the virgin stage, and that's the innocent stage of childhood, where we just absorb life. Life is wonderful, we're in the flow, we're enjoying it. As we go into starting experiencing life, we more than often will move to the victim mode or to the victim channel. And that's where we begin to believe that life is unfair. That somehow or the other we have not been dealt a good hand, that God is out to get us for whatever reason, and that this earth is not where we really want to stay too long. And we can get stuck there. Or we can learn that we can make another choice, and we can switch to the victory channel and begin to see ourselves not as victims but as victors, and able to recreate our lives the way that we want to create them. Then once we do that, hopefully we move to the final stage, which is the vision stage. Now, the vision stage, you're no longer focusing on yourself. It's a wonderful place to be, because now you're ready to give. Until you get to the vision stage, you can't give if you're in the victim stage. You're working on day-to-day survival. Just get rolling out of bed is the most courageous thing you do every morning. Picking that body up and taking it to work and doing what you do is a courageous act. Paying those bills, taking care of those children, whatever it is that's going on in your life, that is all that you can handle. And it's very difficult for you to give your time or your attention or your financial resources or your other goods that you have to other people, because you've been so focused on yourself. I trust that we can all get to the vision place, to move out of the victim mode into the happy mode, the happy channel. Comes out of belief. There was a bumper sticker that I bought at a Unity bookstore up in Kansas City, Missouri, that said, "Life is good, business is great, and people are wonderful." Now, 98% of the people that you associate with daily at work and in your life don't believe that. They don't believe that life is good, life is bad, life is hard, life is evil. The world is evil. You are evil. You were born evil, and you're going to die in sin if you don't confess to the Lord Jesus Christ. They also believe that business is not good, that we're going through some hard times, but you know, not everybody is going through some hard times. And they certainly don't believe that people are wonderful. People are out to get you. You can't trust anybody. And we teach our children the same. But what if we elevated our faith and actually understood that life, like weather, is neither good or bad? It just is. It just is. Good or bad is a judgment call that we make. And the things that have happened in my life that I thought were awfully bad, years later, as I look back, have turned out to be the best things that ever happened to me. How can I judge whether it's good or bad? What if I just accepted life? What if I just accepted people? What if I just accepted that business is good? It's going to be great. It's going to be wonderful. And I moved through my life with that attitude. What would happen? First of all, I would experience good. I would experience success in business. And I would attract to me the people that are wonderful. And the people that are not wonderful, guess what? They will fall away. The scripture says, do not be unequally yoked. Now, that's not a judgment call that one is better than the other. It just means you're unequal. And there are times in our lives when we really, truly need to release some friends and some relationships. And we definitely need to learn how to say no to those things that drain our energy and pull us down and do not bless our lives. Clark Howard, some of you listened to, and he was talking the other day about the Cheesecake Factory restaurant. Is that the name of it? He was amazed that they're doing so well. He said people will call and make a reservation, and they'll tell them the wait is going to be 2 hours. And they go and wait. He says a lot of restaurants would be just absolutely thrilled to, in 1 year, do $1 million worth of business. Each one of those restaurants does $11 million a year. They're making $1,000 per square foot in that restaurant. Now, what's the secret? I'm not a businessman. I don't know. But, you know, they've got to be doing something right. If you provide quality food in a good atmosphere that is served efficiently and pleasantly, you're going to have customers. Whatever business you're in will succeed when you give out of that business to help the customer have a need met. And they will come back to you. And they will tell other people about you because they want to share something that is a good experience. If it's not a good experience, they won't come back. How about life is good, business is great, and people are wonderful? Would you say that with me? Life is good, business is great, and people are wonderful. It's a matter of choice. Which channel do you want to tune into? Finally, faith requires a willingness to really focus on it. The most difficult challenge that most of us have in this religious thought that we teach here is to practice it. We can understand what we just talked about. We can understand that my life comes out of faith, that my faith and what I believe in something actually causes something to happen, and that we need to be careful of where our thoughts are going and which channel we're tuning to. But to do that consistently and to play a little game with ourselves where we gently catch ourselves and change the channel when we need to change it. Say, oh, I switched to the suffering channel. I switched to the victim channel. Why did I do that? And don't beat yourself up about it. Just say, oh, okay, well, I don't want to stay there. It's like the Course in Miracles says, why would you choose suffering? Why would we choose to be there? In the Old Testament, it says, choose this day whom you will serve. Every day we're making that choice. Who will we serve? Where's our mind going to go? Where's our attention going to go? Because we know that wherever our attention goes, life flows. Whatever you focus on is going to increase. That is just the law of the universe. In every single moment, we're making a choice as to where we're going to let our thoughts dwell. Now, you know that your thoughts and mine, even right now, have gone like 10,000 places all of a sudden. And a lot of them we'll just think it and let it pass through. But when we get something in our mind and we begin to hold that thought, it's beginning to move to a belief place. And that's where we have to be careful. Because it's so easy to slip into that victim channel, into that suffering channel. Let me tell you about Kay. Kay's life. Kay is the mother of 2 teenagers. She's 39, but she acts like she's 20 years older. 20 years older. Her friends, after years of trying to be supportive of Kay, are beginning to fall away from her, saying that they're tired of attempting to support a woman who does not want support, but wants only to complain. Have you ever been around somebody that never gets off of their sad tale? It's the same story over and over again. Her entire life Kay has played the role of a long-suffering martyr. As a child, she was the middle of 5. She loathed her controlling mother. Her mother had no friends and complained constantly about her husband. Kay swore that she would never be like her mother, but it's no surprise that she is becoming her. Kay has few friends, complains constantly, alienates her children, and draws herself toward increasingly more negative situations, because like attracts like. Now, in order for Kay to get off of the victim channel, she first needs to recognize that her negativity and her persistent focus on being a victim are powerful beyond belief and are self-destructive. And they are keeping her in misery. Secondly, once you understand that, and that your Kay's life may be your life, is to know that you must make a different choice. There is no way to have anything different in our life if we continue to make the same choices. And we cannot solve a problem with the same thing that created the problem. We have to make a leap into another level of belief and consciousness. Kay has to choose to focus on something different than her sadful tale and begin to move her thoughts to a higher level. If Kay made such choices, she would find her intolerable situation beginning to change. If not immediately, always change, ultimately. The real question is whether Kay really wants to be released from the bondage. And you would think that Kay would. You would think that you and I would want to be released from it. And yes, we remain stuck. Sometimes we remain stuck because there's a payoff. As long as I've got a sad tale to tell, somebody's going to feel sorry for me. And I'm going to get some sympathy, and I'm going to get some attention. And you know, people do not always celebrate your good. So if you go around telling people you're good, they don't always celebrate that because they want to stay in suffering. They want to stay in victim. They want to stay in that mode, and they're not willing to celebrate your good because they don't see any good in their life either. That's how we get stuck there. But when Kay understands and we understand that we make a choice every single day, then we move away from the victim mode to what Deepak Chopra calls the land of all probability, the land of all possibility. See, faith really begins with the concept of possibility. Do you remember as a child riding a bicycle, learning to ride it? And you probably noticed some of the other children in the neighborhood riding a bicycle, and seeing them, you came up with the idea that it was possible for you to do it. Until you think it's possible, you're not even going to try it. I can study the facts, and the facts tell me that it is safer to fly from here to Los Angeles than it is to go by car. Less likely that I would have an accident. I can look at the safety records. I can look at the volume of people that are being moved. I can go down to the airport and actually see people getting on one of those tubes and flying through the air and do what's called a controlled crash when they land and walk out safely. And I can see that, and I can say, oh, that's possible. They can do it because the thousands have done it. They do it thousands every day. And I can go get a brochure and find out someplace I want to fly to, and I can actually go buy a ticket. But until I step aboard that plane, faith hasn't acted, because faith is trust. Until that little boy gets on that bicycle and trusts the training wheels, or trust that Dad's going to hold him up till he learns how to balance himself, he's not going to get on that bike. I'm not going to get on that plane, and you're not going to change your life. And that's what Jesus is trying to tell us. That if we have faith in the possibilities and trust in the truth about how life works and give ourselves to that process and get on board, it just isn't going to happen. And we're going to be stuck like Kay and like Elaine on a channel that is something other than the Discovery Channel. Would you in 2003 love to just live your life on the Discovery Channel and learn all the glorious and wonderful secrets of life, to fully enjoy your life on every single level, not just one, and totally transform your life in 1 year, financially, work-wise, relationship-wise, family-wise, peaceful-wise, joys-wise, healthy-wise? It can be done. And that's our message to you today, and to me. To have hope that whatever has been is now behind you, and it is now ready for you to move forward into a new life. One way to symbolize that is to select a new name for yourself. You have received the rock, and I told you not to throw at the preacher, but to hold it in your hand for a moment and think, if I am going to create a new life for myself, would it help if I create a new name? In Revelations, they talk about releasing people and giving them a white stone in which they can write a new name. The practice was when you stayed in prison and you got out, you were given a white stone in which to write a new name so you can have a fresh start. This is the first Sunday of a new year. This is a new beginning. This is a new life that you're beginning to shape for yourself. And after the service, we have some paint pens back here on the table for you to write on your stone, because any other material won't be able to hold it, but this paint pen will. Just be careful with them. The one splattered this morning. So I wrote on mine. I got my name on there. It will not erase. It won't come off with that. So I want to ask you just to bow your heads for a moment and think with yourself. You know, the word name actually means nature. It means the nature of something. So when Jesus says, pray in my name, whatever you ask for in my name, he's really saying, whatever you ask for in my nature, my Christ nature. What is your nature? What is it that your name represents to you? What is it that a new name might take on for you? Sometimes you can play with your own name and just turn it around. One year, I turned Ray around to Yar, Y-A-R, because I needed to be more masculine. I needed more strength, more power in my life. And I said, Yar sounds strong. So Yar was my name for that year. What might yours be? Ask Spirit to guide you in faith to a new life, to a new beginning, to a new name. And when it has resonated with you and it feels right, keep that in mind. And if you care to after church to go write it down, great. Carry that stone with you in your pockets, where every time you reach in for your change, it's there to remind you of your true nature, your new beginning, your new life of faith. And so it is.